The last time I saw my father smile with that much pure, unadulterated satisfaction, he was systematically destroying me in front of 150 people. Now, years later, he was standing on my doorstep, wearing that very same smug smile, about to ask for the one thing I swore to God I'd never give him, a second chance. Before we dive into the secret I've carried for all these years, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and drop a comment below guessing what the final twist will be. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, my doorstep. He and my mother looked smaller than I remember them, as if shrunken by a potent desperation they wore like a cheap, threadbare coat. They stood awkwardly in the grand foyer of a house they had never visited, a house they couldn't possibly know I owned. It was painfully obvious they couldn't comprehend that the failed waitress they had openly ridiculed for a decade was now the only person in the world who could save them from ruin. In that moment, I had a choice. But to understand the colossal weight of that choice, you need to understand the last 10 years of my life. It all started in a crowded, relentlessly noisy restaurant on a Saturday night. A decade ago, my life was a frantic symphony of clattering plates, the constant ding of the order bell, and the dull, persistent ache that had taken up residence in my feet. I was a waitress, and to me, it was an honorable path. It paid my bills, and the flexible hours allowed me to quietly pursue my own interests. Honestly, I was damn good at it. I found a rhythm in the chaos, a strange comfort in the brief connections with strangers, and I cherished the bone-deep exhaustion at the end of a 16-hour shift that meant I had truly earned my sleep. To my family, however, my apron was a badge of utter failure, a source of deep, unending, and very public shame. My father was a high-flying marketing executive who wore his expensive suits like armor, a man who defined his worth by his job title and bonus. My mother, whose greatest achievement was marrying well, dedicated her life to curating the flawless image of upper-middle-class perfection. And then there was my older brother, Mark, the golden child, gliding effortlessly through law school on a cloud of parental adoration, destined for a corner office. In the middle of this perfect family portrait, there I was, Sarah the waitress. Family dinners were my personal crucible, a bi-weekly ritual of psychological torment disguised as family bonding. The questions were always the same, dripping with a fake concern more insulting than scorn. "Is this really what you want to be doing with your life, sweetie?" my mother would ask, her voice a soft, pitying caress that made my skin crawl. My father was always more direct, his words like bullets in a performance review. "Your cousins are getting their master's degrees, Sarah. Your brother's about to pass the bar. And you're clearing tables for a living." I remember one Sunday dinner with excruciating clarity. Mark had just accepted an internship at a prestigious law firm. The meal was a toast to his glorious future. "He has a real career, a trajectory," my father announced, beaming. He then turned his gaze to me. "Sarah, you're 24. Don't you want a trajectory? Or is the plan to just serve people for the rest of your life?" Before I could respond, Mark laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Come on, Dad. Someone has to bring us our appetizers. It's a public service, really." The table chuckled, and I felt myself physically shrink, a hot, suffocating flush rising in my face. I looked desperately to my mother, but she just gave me a tight, pained smile that screamed, "Don't you dare make a scene." I'll never forget the time she called me an hour before Christmas dinner, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Try not to get that kitchen smell on your clothes before you come over, dear. You know how it lingers in the curtains." Each comment was a tiny, precise paper cut. 1,000 of them will make you bleed out. I felt like a walking disappointment, a failed project they'd long since written off. For years, I tried to defend myself. I argued that it was honest work, that I was independent. It was useless. In their eyes, my uniform was a permanent stain on their pristine family legacy. The breaking point was my father's 60th birthday party. It was a lavish affair at a 5-star hotel, with chandeliers that cost more than my car. They insisted I come, not out of desire for my presence, but because explaining my absence would have been a social inconvenience. The entire night, I felt like an exhibit at a freak show. My father would introduce me to his colleagues with a tight, apologetic smile. "This is my younger daughter, Sarah. She's finding her way." He delivered the line with a theatrical sigh, as if my existence was a heavy cross to bear. But the real gut punch came during his birthday toast. After a gushing tribute to Mark, the soon-to-be brilliant lawyer, he turned his attention to me. He raised his heavy crystal glass, a cruel, self-satisfied smirk on his lips as he scanned the room of 150 guests. "And to Sarah," he announced, his voice booming with false cheer. "She's decided to learn about the service industry from the ground up. Who knows, maybe one day she'll even own her very own apron." The room erupted in horrible laughter. I saw the pitying glances from their wives, the dismissive smirks from their children, who were my age and already doctors and lawyers. My face burned with a shame so intense it brought tears to my eyes. In that moment, I wasn't his daughter. I was a punchline. I locked eyes with my mother, and she just slightly, almost imperceptibly, shook her head, a silent plea for me to not ruin her husband's big moment. That was it. I was done being their footnote, their cautionary tale. I wasn't going to let them write my story anymore. That night, I didn't go home defeated. I went home with a cold, hard fire burning in my chest. They wanted a success story. Fine. I would give them one. But I was going to do it my way. And I was going to do it in complete secret. Quitting my job would have been emotional and stupid. My waitress job was no longer just a paycheck. It became my classroom and my laboratory. I started saving money with a fanatical devotion, moving into an apartment so small I could touch all four walls from the center. Every dollar I saved was another brick in the fortress I was building. I transformed from a waitress into a covert student of the business. I wasn't just taking orders, I was watching everything. I tracked inventory, analyzed which dishes had the highest profit margins, and observed every customer complaint. The manager, David, who had built his life in the industry my father mocked, started to notice. He saw me on my breaks, not scrolling through my phone, but taking detailed notes. One night, he cornered me as I was sketching a revised floor plan. "What are you up to, Sarah?" he asked. I told him the truth, or part of it. I want to understand how this all works. I want to own a place of my own one day. He looked at me, and for the first time, I felt like someone truly saw me. He didn't see a lowly waitress. He saw an ambition my family had spent years trying to extinguish. "Good," he grunted. "This business chews people up. You have to be smarter than it." From that day on, he became my unofficial mentor. He taught me how to negotiate with suppliers, read a profit and loss statement, and forecast staffing needs. While my family pictured me slinging hash, I was getting a real-world MBA. My tiny apartment became my university. At night, fueled by cheap coffee and pure spite, I devoured online business courses, accounting, finance, marketing, law. I studied until my eyes burned. My parents would call, their voices dripping with pity. "What are you doing tonight, sweetie?" "Just watching a movie." Something like that. I'd lie, closing a textbook on supply chain management. They never suspected their failed daughter was meticulously plotting her ascent. The years blurred into a relentless cycle of work, study, and save. My family's mockery didn't stop, but it lost its power. Their words were just fuel for the fire. 2 years in, David came to me with a proposition. "I know a guy," he said. "Leo. Runs a small Italian place. Good food. Terrible businessman. He's about 6 months from losing everything." I told him a sharp young woman I know might be able to help. It was my first test. Armed with David's teachings and my online degrees, I quietly launched a small consulting business. I met with Leo and his wife, Maria. They were terrified. I spent a week observing, then I went to work. I reworked their menu, renegotiated with vendors, and implemented a digital inventory system that cut food waste by 40%. 6 months later, they turned their first profit in 3 years. Leo, with tears in his eyes, insisted on giving me a percentage of his renewed profits. Word of mouth did the rest. My little side hustle, born from humiliation, grew into a thriving consulting firm. I hired my first employee, then another. And the entire time, to my family, I was still just Sarah, the 30-something waitress. They were so blinded by their own prejudice, they couldn't see who I was becoming. Which brings us back to my foyer. This house, a beautiful colonial, was the first major purchase I made after my firm took off. It was the kind of house my mother always dreamed her children would own. And there she was, beside my father, utterly lost within its walls. In halting whispers, they laid out the pathetic story. My dad's firm had undergone restructuring. He'd been made redundant. The truth was, his old world strategies were no match for the data-driven world of digital marketing. They had been living beyond their means for years. Now, with no income and a mountain of debt, the bank was threatening to foreclose. We didn't know where else to turn. My mother choked out. I know we were hard on you about your job. My father mumbled, his gaze fixed on the floor. But we're your family. I let the silence hang in the air, thick with a decade of resentment. Then, I asked the question that had burned a hole in my heart for 10 years. Why me? Why not ask Mark? Their faces fell. They admitted their golden child, the brilliant lawyer, was drowning in his own student loan debt and a mortgage he couldn't afford. He had the image, but nothing of substance. That was my cue. I walked to my home office and returned with my laptop. You mocked my job for a decade, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You thought I was a failure. You were embarrassed by me. What you never bothered to ask was what I was learning. I opened a file. It was my firm's portfolio. I showed them the client list, dozens of successful restaurants. I showed them the revenue reports, the growth charts, the glowing testimonials. I showed them the business degree I earned with honors while they thought I was watching TV. Their faces shifted from desperation to confusion, then to slack-jawed astonishment. Then, I delivered the final blow. My firm helps small businesses compete against big corporations, I explained. We make them more efficient. In the last few years, we've gotten so good at it that we've started to disrupt the market share of some of the biggest restaurant conglomerates in the country. I saw a flicker of dawning, sickening horror in my father's eyes. One of those conglomerates was your firm's biggest client, a marquee account you landed 20 years ago. When their quarterly profits started to slide, because of the scrappy little guys I was helping, they slashed their marketing budget. That's why your department was cut. That's why you were made redundant, Dad. Your entire world was made obsolete by the very industry you dismissed as being beneath you. I clicked on another file. An image filled the screen. It was an elegant hotel restaurant, the one with the crystal chandeliers. And as for this place, I think you know it. It was your favorite spot for anniversaries. It's where you held your 60th birthday party. The air went out of the room. My mother went pale. My father stared at the screen, and for the first time, the man who always had an answer had nothing to say. The man who joked about me one day owning my own apron was staring at the undeniable proof that I owned the whole damn building. The shock was so thick you could feel it. It was in the way my mother's hand flew to her mouth. It was in the way my father seemed to sag into the sofa, as if his bones had turned to dust. We had no idea, my mother whispered. And then, right on cue, came the pivot. Her face, a mask of despair moments ago, rearranged itself into a beacon of maternal pride. Sarah, we are so incredibly, unbelievably proud of you. I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Are you? I asked, my voice flat. Are you proud of me now? Now that you see the house, the business, the money? I gestured to the laptop screen, to the empire built on their scorn. You weren't proud when I was working 60-hour weeks on my feet to pay for those classes. You weren't proud when I was learning the menial skills that built all of this. You were embarrassed. The apologies started pouring out then, clumsy and self-serving. They didn't sound sorry for how they had treated me, they sounded sorry they had bet on the wrong horse. They didn't respect me, they needed me. Their sudden pride wasn't about my journey, it was about my destination, because my destination finally had something they could use. I looked at these two people who had caused me so much quiet, grinding pain, now so broken in my living room. Part of me, the girl from the birthday party, wanted to gloat. But looking at them, I didn't feel rage anymore. I just felt done. I won't let you lose your house, I said finally. Relief washed over their faces, but I cut it short. But let's be clear. This is not a gift. It is a loan. My lawyer will draw up a formal, legally binding agreement with a market rate interest and a strict repayment plan. You will treat this as the business transaction it is, because that is the only language you have ever truly respected. Then, I lay down my final term. And our relationship, that is an entirely separate negotiation. The condescension, the pitying jokes, the shame, all of that is over. For good. From this moment forward, you will treat me with genuine, demonstrable respect, or you will not have me in your life. We can try to rebuild, but the new foundation will be honesty, not appearances. The choice is yours. It wasn't the dramatic, slam the door revenge you see in movies. It was quieter, colder, and far more powerful. It was me, finally setting the terms. It was me, taking control of the narrative. I was no longer the disappointing daughter. I was the bank. In the end, that waitress job they hated so much was the greatest education I ever received. It didn't just teach me about profit margins. It taught me about humility, resilience, and the art of reading people, skills my father, in his cushy executive suite, had clearly never learned. My success was never about the money. It was about proving my own worth to myself on my own terms. The money was just a tool, the leverage that finally, after a decade of silence, allowed me to have the last word. They say success is the best revenge. But I think true power isn't about watching the people who hurt you fail. It's about being in a position to save them and making them understand that you are doing it not because you have to, but because you choose to. It's about the quiet, unshakable knowledge of your own self-worth, and that is something no one can give you, and no one can ever take away. If this story left you speechless, smash that like button right now. Tell me in the comments, was justice served, or did I go too far? And don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss next week's chilling confession.